How does Tulane beat Ole Miss in the college football playoff? We've already seen this matchup once. It did not go well for Tulane. So, how do they get revenge? How do they build upon that and learn from that experience? This is a different team than it was at the beginning of the year when they played Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is also a different team as well. We're going to break down what Tulane can do. What is the one thing that they can take advantage of that is different about Ole Miss and not in a good way, and talk about what is the likelihood that this ends up in an upset? Now, Tulane has been in this position before. They played a good football team in a big time game, and they found a way to pull off an upset. Now, this team is not that team, and Ole Miss is not that USC team that they beat. This is a different scenario. Now, we had questions about how focused this team would be in the American Conference Championship. Clearly, John Summerall is not distracted. Clearly, this team is not distracted. They are prepared to make a run. They are prepared to win football games at a high level and win important games. They did that in the American Conference Championship, but winning this game requires them to go and reach another level that they haven't hit yet. How do they do that? That's a big question. I think there are a few things that need to change, especially when you look at what happened in the last game. And it's just more of the same. And it's pretty obvious what they'll need to do, but it's going to be tough for them to make that happen. The first thing that has to happen is on the shoulders of Jake Retzlaff. What Jake Retzlaff does in this game really dictates the closeness of this game. It was 45-10 in the previous matchup. And when you're looking at what could potentially go better, you're looking at the quarterback position. Because in the first matchup, Retzlaff finishes 5 of 17 for 56 yards with 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Plain and simple, that is the biggest thing that needs to change. The offense has to have a chance to move the ball. Yes, they did run for 178 yards, but they only threw for 104, and it never really felt like this team was ever in that game. When you look at what happened, it was 23-3 going into the fourth quarter, and it never felt like Tulane was in that game, and it's because the passing attack, the offense, just didn't seem like it was ever in the game, ever involved. Explosive plays are going to have to be part of that. Whether that's as a runner, Retzlaff has shown that he can be a problem when he's playing consistently. Whether that's as a passer, whether that's as a runner, he has shown that he can be a problem. So how do you get there? How do you get to that point? And how do you make it so Ole Miss has to worry about that? There's one thing that we'll talk about later that is going to be a factor. And Tulane has to take their game to a new level offensively, plain and simple. I don't know how they're going to win this game if they don't do that. Because if they can't, Ole Miss is just going to tee off on Jake Retzlaff. And if there's been a weakness of this offense, it's been the lack of a consistent passing attack. And it's hurt them at times. The numbers will show you that it's been a fairly good offense, but the games where they've struggled, the passing attack has pretty much disappeared. Teams know how to beat this team, and that's what Ole Miss is going to try to do. They are going to try to rattle Jake Retzlaff. They're going to try to make him beat them, and how he performs in this one is really going to dictate the outcome. Plain and simple. The offensive staff has to find a way to be better than what they were in the first one. Now, the defense also has to do its part. When you look at what they gave up, 548 yards of total offense for Ole Miss is not going to be a successful formula if Tulane wants to pull off this upset. You have to take the war to them, and you have to pull out all the stops. You have to make their life miserable and wreak havoc, because right now there are people who think that Ole Miss is kind of going through a little bit of uncertainty. The roster is still the same, the talent is still the same, but the Lane Kiffin departure put a lot of stress on this Ole Miss team, put a lot of drama into that program. We're going to find out how well they navigated that. And maybe Tulane isn't the best measuring stick for that, but we're going to find out if they can take this seriously and put Tulane away like everybody expects them to. But one way that Tulane can keep themselves in the game, get off to a good start, is literally be disruptive, be as disruptive as possible. Tap into that uncertainty for Ole Miss, because the coaching staff is kind of a skeleton crew. You had a lot of emotional stress put on this team. Tap into that. Go into this game with nothing to lose. Find ways to get to Trinidad Chambliss. Find ways to disrupt what he does, because in the first game, they didn't do anything to do that. He had no problem moving the ball. 307 yards and 2 touchdowns passing. He also ran for 112 yards. He is going to be a dangerous player. Get hits on him. Be disruptive. Send pressures. John Summerall is a great defensive mind, but his defense has also struggled with consistency. If they can get to a place where they're creating these disruptive plays, tackles for loss, sacks, that is going to be a huge, huge key. Guys like Harvey Dyson have shown that they can wreak havoc in the backfield. You're going to need to do that early and often to somehow create turnovers, give yourself an opportunity to win this game, because it's not going to be easy. And it is going to be, honestly, there's a part of me that thinks that Tulane beating Ole Miss might be more difficult than James Madison beating Oregon, because we've already seen this matchup. There's definitely some doubt. So the other key is erase the memory of the first matchup. That matchup didn't happen in the eyes of Tulane. That's how you kind of have to approach it, because as soon as you allow that doubt to start creeping in, that's when Ole Miss pulls away. So how do you be mentally tough? How does John Summerall get his group to essentially treat this like a new matchup, a completely new matchup that's never happened before? Because things have changed for Ole Miss too, and not just in the positive. There have been some negative things that have affected this team, and the Lane Kiffin departure put a lot of stress and put a lot of drama into this program. You had to tap into that. And this is a Tulane defense that when they're flying around the field and when they're playing at their peak, they can create a ton of havoc. They can create a ton of disruption into the rhythm, the timing of Ole Miss's offense. We've seen it before. Turnovers are a big key. They've been able to turn the ball over, get those takeaways very frequently. And that's been huge for their success. You have multiple guys that have interceptions this year. You have multiple guys with fumble recoveries. You've had games where they've had multi-turnover games, and you're going to need that in this one. Limit those explosive plays for Ole Miss, because you have a tough task defending Trinidad Chambliss, defending Kewan Lacey. And while Tulane only kept Lacey to 68 yards, he still had 2 touchdowns, and the offense didn't really worry about that because they were doing so many other things. Deuce Alexander had 94 yards, Daquan Wright 71, Deshaun Stribling 62, Caden Lee 60. Explosive plays. Each of them had a play over 30 yards. Limiting those explosive plays is going to keep the ball in front of them. It's going to allow them to rally to the football, and it's going to put stress on Trinidad Chambliss to make the right choice, to make the right decision. He hasn't turned the ball over a ton this year, but that's a way for Tulane to stay in this game and keep Ole Miss off the scoreboard, keep them in check, and give them a chance to win. John Summerall obviously is moving on to Florida. He has shown that his team can be focused. They need to be even more focused in this one. How focused they are is going to determine how successful they can be early in this game and how much of a chance they're going to have going into the second half and into the fourth quarter. If there's a guy that can pull off the upset, it's John Summerall. I think John Summerall can get his team to play at a high level, but this is going to be tough. And if Tulane beats Ole Miss, it's going to be one of the most epic upsets that we've seen in college football history. And there were people that doubted, including myself, that doubted Tulane to beat USC when they did beat them in the Cotton Bowl. I didn't think that that was going to be possible. They didn't look like a great team, but they figured it out. They found a way to win. this Tulane team has an opportunity to kind of do the same thing. And we already have a data point that says that Ole Miss is better. If they can find a way to essentially erase the memory of that game, play a completely different team, and give Ole Miss a ton to think about, they're in position to be extremely successful. It's going to be fun, but it's going to be tough. If they can do it, we're going to be talking about this game for a long, long time.